My brother told me, "Admit it, or I will call the police," after blaming me for draining the family account. I just said, "Do it," when the police got him instead. My parents could only stare in silence. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and I've been mostly independent since I was 18. I say mostly because there was a stretch in college where I ate ramen 4 nights a week and occasionally accepted a care package from my mom, but I paid my own tuition, worked part-time at a tax prep office, and graduated without asking my parents for a dime beyond the occasional box of granola bars. My brother Dererick is 3 years younger than me. Dererick is the kind of guy who walks into a room and immediately becomes the most interesting person in it. Always has been. He's good-looking, funny, quick on his feet, sells pharmaceuticals for a living, and makes solid money doing it. If you met him at a barbecue, you'd probably think he was great. Most people do. Growing up, Tyler was the favorite. I don't say that with any bitterness. Okay, maybe a little, but it's just a fact. My mum, Elaine, is a retired school librarian, sweet as anything. But she's got this blind spot the size of a parking garage when it comes to Tyler. He was the baby. He was the one who needed more help, more attention, more support. I was the quiet one who handled things on my own. So everyone just assumed I was fine. My dad, Richard, is retired postal service. Good man. 65, bad knees, early diabetes. He loves us both. I believe that. But he spent his entire marriage deferring to my mom on family stuff. If Elaine says the sky is green rays, reaching for a paint swatch to match. Here's the thing about my family. We're not dramatic. We're not the kind of people who throw plates or have screaming matches at Thanksgiving. We're the kind of people who let things fester quietly until the rot is so deep nobody can fix it. Passive-aggressive texts, long silences. I'm fine when nothing is fine. That's our brand. For years, I've kept a comfortable distance. I visit for holidays. I call my mum every couple of weeks. I send birthday cards. I'm not estranged. I'm just separate. I built my own life and I like it. I've got a townhouse with a yard. I actually maintain a job. I'm proud of a couple of close friends. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. Tyler, on the other hand, has been circling the drain financially for years and nobody talks about it. He married Rachel 4 years ago. She's 29, works part-time doing social media management for a local boutique, and has champagne expectations on a sparkling water budget. They renovated their kitchen last year. Granite countertops the works. Tyler drives a leased Audi. They took a cruise to the Bahamas for their anniversary. Everything looks perfect from the outside. I know what pharmaceutical reps make. It's good money. It is not Audi plus cruise plus granite money. Not without help, but I minded my own business because that's what I do. That's what our family does. We don't ask questions. I should tell you about one more thing before I get into what happened. Last Thanksgiving, I was at my parents' house, and Dererick showed up wearing a new watch. I'm not a watch guy, but I know enough to recognize a tag heuer when I see one. My mom complimented it. Rachel said something about how Dererick deserved something nice. Nobody asked how he paid for it. I ate my turkey and kept my mouth shut. That's the context. That's the ecosystem. A family where one person's spending is never questioned and another person's silence is mistaken for not caring. The trouble started about 4 months ago when my dad called me on a Tuesday night. This was unusual. Dad doesn't call. Dad answers calls. Mom calls. That's the system. "Hey, bud," he said, and his voice had that careful walking on eggshells quality that immediately put me on alert. "Got a question for you. Kind of a financial thing." "Sure." "When you were over here for Easter, did you get—" He paused. "Did you happen to use my computer? The one in the den?" I checked my email on it. "What?" Another pause. "Your mother noticed some money moved out of one of our accounts, and she's trying to figure out the timeline." "How much money?" $6, $200. I sat there for a second. "Dad, are you asking me if I took $6, $200 from your bank account?" No, he said quickly. "We're just trying to figure out what happened." Tyler thought maybe. Tyler thought what? He said you'd asked him about the account, about how the online banking worked. He was just trying to help us trace it. I told my dad clearly and calmly that I had not asked Tyler anything about their banking. I had not accessed any financial accounts, and I had no idea what he was talking about. He said, "Okay." He said he believed me. He said it was probably a bank error and they'd sort it out. I hung up and sat in my kitchen for about 10 minutes running through the conversation in my head. Something was off. Not just the accusation, the framing. Dererick thought maybe. Dererick was trying to help trace it. Tyler was already part of the story before I even knew there was one. I almost grabbed my phone and called him right then. Almost. But something in my gut told me to wait. 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday morning, I was at my desk going over one of my clients' quarterly reports when my phone rang. The number had a local area code, but I didn't recognize it. Is this Nolan Bennett? Yes. Mr. Mercer, this is Detective Kevin Rhodes with the Columbus Division of Police. I'm calling about a theft report. Your name came up during our investigation, and I'd like to ask you a few questions. Would you be able to come to the station sometime this week? It felt like the ground shifted beneath me. A theft report? My name? I asked. Who made the report? I can tell you it involves a complaint from a family member about unauthorized access to a financial account. I'd rather go over the details in person. I told him I'd come in, then ended the call. After closing my office door, I sat down and stared at the wall for nearly 3 minutes. About 10 minutes later, my co-worker Melissa knocked on the glass. She was one of the senior partners at the firm in her late 30s, and one of those people who noticed everything but rarely said much. She opened the door halfway. You look like someone just got read their Miranda rights. Funny you should say that. She stepped inside, and I gave her the short version of what happened. She listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I respected most about her. You need to walk in there with a plan, she said, not just an explanation. I know, and I probably need a lawyer too. She nodded once and walked out. I sat there for another minute thinking about how my own brother had somehow put me in a situation where I might actually need a criminal defense attorney. This was the same brother I taught how to ride a bike, the same brother I drove to prom after he totaled his car because our parents couldn't afford to get it fixed in time. Then I opened my personal laptop and started doing what I do best. At that point, I still had no idea how deep this whole thing really went. I went to the station on Friday wearing a button-down shirt and slacks. That's just how I handle things. If a detective wants to question me about a felony I know I didn't commit, I show up looking professional. Detective Marcos was a stocky man in his 40s with a shaved head and an easygoing, patient manner. He shook my hand, offered me coffee, and led me into an interview room that looked exactly as depressing as you'd expect. He opened a folder. Here's what we have. Your parents, Richard and Elaine Bennett, reported that approximately $6,200 was transferred out of their joint checking account without authorization. The report was filed by your brother, Tyler Donovan, on their behalf. On their behalf, I repeated. He came in himself and sat in the very chair you're sitting in now. He said you used the family computer during a recent visit, asked questions about their online banking, and the unauthorized transfers started not long after. None of that is true. Marcos looked at me calmly. I'm giving you the opportunity to tell me your side. So I did. I explained that I used my father's computer for about 10 minutes on Easter Sunday, only to check my email. I told him I never asked anyone about their banking information. I said I had no idea which account they were talking about, or how those transfers were made. Then I told him what I do for a living. Forensic accounting, he asked. That's right. If you check the Internet Protocol logs connected to those transactions, they won't match any device or network I've ever used. He nodded. That's helpful. We're still in the early stages of the investigation. I'll be in touch. When I left the station, I sat in my car for about 15 minutes. My hands weren't shaking, but they felt like they wanted to. The accusation itself wasn't what kept replaying in my head. It was the fact that Tyler had walked into a police station and officially lied about me. That wasn't some misunderstanding. It was a deliberate decision. I called my mother that night. Nolan, honey, I know this is upsetting. Mom, did you and Dad really file a police report against me? She was silent for a few seconds. Tyler took care of it. He was worried. He said the bank needed a paper trail. A paper trail that says I stole money from my own parents. No one is saying you stole anything. Tyler just panicked. You know how he gets. He told the detective I asked about your banking login. That never happened. Maybe he got confused. Maybe he remembered it differently. Mom, he gave a formal statement to the police. People don't just misremember something like that. She went quiet. Then she said, Nolan, please don't tear this family apart over one mistake. Tyler panicked. That's all. I didn't argue. There wasn't anything left to argue about. She had already decided which version of the story she was going to believe. In her version of the story, Tyler was just a concerned son who got a little carried away, and I was the one making too much out of it. Okay, Mum, I said. I hear you. Then I hung up and opened my laptop. That was the moment when being a forensic accountant stopped being a small detail and became the center of everything. The first thing I did was request a copy of the police report through the public records process. It took a few days to arrive. When it finally did, I read it 3 different times. Tyler's statement was detailed. Too detailed. He didn't simply claim that I'd asked about my parents' banking. He described an entire conversation that supposedly happened in the kitchen on Easter. According to him, I asked about their account number and whether their online banking used 2-factor authentication. He even listed dates and amounts for the transfers. Then I noticed something that immediately stood out. The report said the stolen amount was $6,200, but in the supplemental notes, there was a reference to a total suspected loss of $47,000. I read that number 4 times. $47,000. My parents lived comfortably, but they were far from wealthy. My father's postal pension and my mother's retirement savings were all they really had. Losing $47,000 would be devastating. So why did Tyler only report $6,200 instead of the full amount? Because he didn't want anyone digging into the missing $40,800. The $6,200 withdrawal was the one my father actually noticed because it was recent and large enough to appear on a statement. The rest had disappeared little by little over a much longer period. I didn't have access to my parents' bank records, and I knew they wouldn't hand them over. Not while Tyler was convincing them that I was the problem, but sooner or later the bank would have to produce those records. I called Melissa, the senior partner at my firm. We had worked together for 6 years, and I trusted her judgment more than almost anyone. I need a recommendation for a good criminal defense attorney, I told her. Not for a client, for me. She didn't sound shocked or ask unnecessary questions. I'll send you 3 names tonight. I hired Laura Whitmore, a former prosecutor in her mid-50s, who had absolutely no patience for nonsense. At our first meeting, I told her everything. If the detective does his job, she said, the bank records will tell the whole story. But we're not going to sit around waiting for that. We're going to make sure the evidence is preserved. That same week, she sent a preservation letter to the bank, placing a legal hold on every transaction connected to my parents' accounts for the previous 3 years. She also prepared a formal response denying every allegation Tyler had made and requested that investigators verify the Internet Protocol logs and trace every device involved in the suspicious transactions. Meanwhile, I did something I'm not especially proud of, although I'd do it again without hesitation. I went through my emails, text messages, calendar entries, and every personal record I had, building a timeline of every visit I'd made to my parents' house during the previous 3 years. I documented the dates, times, and reasons for every visit. Then, I compared that timeline with my work travel records, airline tickets, hotel reservations, and client schedules. On 9 of the dates connected to the suspicious transactions, I wasn't even in the state. At 1 o'clock in the morning, I sat at my kitchen table staring at a spreadsheet proving that my brother had lied to the police to hide the fact that he had been stealing from our parents for years. The part that hurt the most wasn't discovering what Tyler had done. It was knowing my parents were going to fight me over it. Admitting I was right meant admitting what Tyler had done, and I knew they weren't ready to face that. I saved the spreadsheet, backed it up on 2 separate drives, and finally went to bed. The next part was going to require patience, and patience starts with getting some sleep. The following 6 weeks were some of the hardest of my life, not because something dramatic happened, but because nothing happened at all. That was the whole point. Laura told me the most important thing I could do was stay boring. Don't confront Tyler, don't argue with my parents, don't post anything online, don't give anyone a reason to paint me as unstable or vindictive later. You're building a case file, she said. The strongest ones are built by people who stay calm. So that's exactly what I did. I went to work, I came home, I ran the dishwasher, mowed the lawn, and watched basketball on Thursday nights. And during the quiet hours in between, I built the most detailed financial reconstruction of my entire career. Melissa helped me, not officially and not as part of the legal case, but she had spent 20 years doing forensic accounting and knew exactly how this kind of analysis needed to be structured. She helped me organize everything so it would stand up to serious scrutiny. Clean documentation, clear source attribution, no gaps. You're treating this like a client case, Melissa said one evening as we reviewed my timeline. That's the only way I know how to deal with it, I answered. She looked at me for a moment. You doing okay? No, but I'm doing this. From the police report, my records, and the information Laura had already obtained, I started putting the pieces together. 3 years earlier, my mum had added Tyler to the joint checking account connected to my parents' retirement savings. She said it was in case of a medical emergency after Dad's diabetes diagnosis. She never added me. I wasn't offended. I lived across town, while Tyler lived just a couple of streets away. That part made sense. What didn't make sense was the pattern of withdrawals that began about 4 months after Tyler was added. He was careful. Most transfers were under $1,000. Many were clean numbers like $500 or $800, making them look routine. Some payments were disguised as vendor transactions, but they actually went toward Tyler's credit cards and car lease. Over 34 months, the total reached about $47,000. My parents never caught it because my mum rarely checked the account, and Dad left all the finances to her. The $6,200 withdrawal was simply the one that was too large to ignore. Instead of admitting what he'd done, Tyler blamed me. Now I needed the bank records to prove it. Laura's preservation letter made sure they wouldn't be deleted, but getting access depended on either my parents cooperating or the police investigation. Detective Marcos was doing his job. He requested the records from the bank, and little by little they came in. Transaction logs, internet protocol records, device information. Every new document backed up what I'd already figured out. Meanwhile, I acted like everything was normal. I called my mum every Sunday and kept our conversations light. One week she excitedly told me she'd won a blueberry pie contest at church. We laughed while she insisted the secret ingredient was a little love and a lot of lemon zest. Then, before hanging up, she said, "Tyler and Rachel are thinking about having a baby. Wouldn't that be wonderful?" "It would," I replied. After the call, all I could think about was Tyler planning a family while living off money stolen from our parents. Mom was already imagining grandchildren instead of checking her bank statements. Each week she sounded more relaxed because I never mentioned Tyler or the investigation. She wanted to believe everything had blown over. During that time, Tyler texted me twice. One message was a football highlight. The other was a picture of a steak he'd grilled with the caption, "Getting good at this." I ignored both. He never followed up. That told me all I needed to know. At work, I buried myself in client cases. Focusing on someone else's financial problems was easier than thinking about my own. About 5 weeks later, Laura called me on a Thursday evening. "The bank records are in," she said. "Detective Marcos is reviewing them, but I've already seen them. Every flagged transaction traces back to a device registered to Tyler Donovan. The internet protocol addresses match his home network, and, in several cases, his cell phone. Your name isn't connected to a single access log. None of your devices ever logged into that account." I sat down on my couch and closed my eyes. It was exactly what I'd expected. Still, hearing it confirmed felt completely different from simply believing it. "There's something else," Laura said. "Several of the larger transfers happened while you were out of town for work. Detective Marcos has already noticed that. So what happens now? Now we let him finish his investigation. Then we present your full analysis." "How long?" "Weeks, not months. Be patient." So I waited. I went to work, came home, and kept calling my mom every Sunday. Then Tyler called. His voice was friendly and relaxed, like none of this had ever happened. "Hey, Mom and Dad's 40th anniversary's coming up. Rachel and I are planning dinner at that Italian place on 5th with the patio. Saturday night. Just the 6 of us. Mom really wants you there." He paused before adding, "I know things have been a little awkward lately. Let's just move on." Fresh start? Fresh start. Like he hadn't accused me of stealing. Like he hadn't spent 3 years draining our parents' retirement. "Sure," I said. "Saturday works." As soon as I hung up, I called Laura. "I need this finished before Saturday." We had 4 days. Tuesday evening, we spread the entire case across her conference table. Bank records, internet protocol logs, device histories, my travel records, the police report, my financial reconstruction. This is where we stand, she said. Detective Marcos no longer considers you a suspect, but the paperwork isn't finished. He hasn't moved on Tyler yet because the bank is still verifying the records. Can we speed it up? We don't have to. What matters is giving him your complete analysis showing every transfer, every device, every date you were out of state, and every account Tyler used. That's what proves fraud. She tapped the file. I'll deliver this to Marcos tomorrow along with a request to clear your name and redirect the investigation. And if he wants more time, he won't. You already did most of his work. That night I barely slept. Not because I doubted the evidence, because I knew this was about to destroy my family. Lying in bed, I remembered being 12 years old. Tyler was 9 and wanted an expensive remote control car our parents couldn't afford. I'd spent all summer mowing lawns to buy it for him. He played with it for months and proudly told everyone his big brother gave it to him. I didn't know why that memory came back, but it stayed with me until I finally fell asleep. Wednesday morning, Laura delivered the file. She called me around noon. He's reviewing it now. He actually asked if you put all this together yourself. I told him that's what you do for a living. He said it's the most organized case he's ever received from a civilian. So what now? He finishes reviewing it, speaks with the prosecutor, and I expect he'll want to interview Tyler before Saturday. I can't promise the timing, but one thing is certain. What? You're cleared. The evidence completely clears your name. Everything from here is about Tyler. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I kept thinking about Saturday night. My parents would be celebrating 40 years of marriage with no idea that one son had stolen from them and the other had just handed the proof to the police. Thursday passed quietly. I worked and stayed off my phone. Around lunch, Melissa stopped by my office. "You're grinding your teeth again," she said. "I'm not. You've been doing it since I walked in." She sat down. "So, how's everything going? Want to talk about it?" I thought about it. "Not really," I said. "But I appreciate you asking." Melissa looked at me for a moment. "You know, Nolan, you're allowed to be angry. You don't have to treat this like another case. It's the only way I know how." "I know. That's exactly why I said it." She stood up. "And relax your jaw. Dental work isn't cheap." Around 4 that afternoon, Laura sent me a text. Marcos reviewed the full file. He has a few questions, but they're just for clarification. He's moving forward. That night, I sat alone in my townhouse thinking about what I actually wanted, not legally. I'd already figured that part out, personally. I wanted my name cleared. That was happening. I wanted Tyler to face the consequences. That was already in motion. But what did I want from my parents? What did I want from the family that looked at me and decided I was more likely to be the thief? I didn't have an answer. I still don't. Friday morning, Detective Marcos called. "Mr. Mercer, I finished reviewing everything your attorney provided. I'd like you to come in this afternoon. You're not a suspect anymore. I just need to confirm a few details before I move forward." So I went. Same station, same interview room, same terrible coffee smell. This time, though, the file on the table was mine. Marcos looked tired. "I've been doing this for 16 years, he said. "I don't often receive a case file from the accused that's more organized than ours." "I wasn't exactly the accused," I said. He smiled. "Fair enough." We went through the transactions one by one. He asked how I traced each transfer, each device, each internet protocol address, and each date I was out of state. About halfway through, he looked up. "You really do this for a living?" "I do." "How long?" "About 9 years." He nodded, then opened the section about the joint account. "Your brother was added to this account?" "Yes." "And your mother added him voluntarily?" "She said it was in case my dad had a medical emergency." Marcos closed the file. "I need to make a few calls." We shook hands, and I left. Sitting in my car, I realized the anniversary dinner was the next day. I still hadn't decided if I was going. Then my phone buzzed, a text from Tyler. "Reservations at 7. Rachel says wear something nice. See you there, brother." I read it twice before driving home. In the end, I went. Not for Tyler, not even for my mum. I went because my parents had been married for 40 years, and my dad deserved one more dinner with both of his sons at the same table. The restaurant was beautiful, with white tablecloths, candles, and a patio overlooking the river. Rachel was already there, arranging a small bouquet in the middle of the table. She smiled when she saw me. "Nolan, you made it." "I wouldn't miss it." Tyler stood up, shook my hand, smiled, and acted like everything was perfectly normal. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have believed him. A few minutes later, my parents arrived. Mum hugged me tightly, and I could feel how relieved she was that I hadn't caused a scene. Dad patted me on the shoulder. "Good to see you, bud." We ordered dinner and talked about Dad's garden, Rachel's new client, and my parents' plans to visit Myrtle Beach. Tyler entertained everyone with a story about a sales conference in Nashville. He was charming, funny, and completely in control of the room. I watched him smiling while all I could think about was a spreadsheet sitting safely on my backup drives. During dessert, Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm so glad we're all together," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "This is what matters," she said. I squeezed her hand but didn't say anything. Around 9 that night, we said our goodbyes in the parking lot. I hugged my dad, hugged my mom, shook Tyler's hand one last time, and drove home knowing it would be the last time the 6 of us shared a table like that. Monday morning, Detective Marcos called Tyler in for another interview. I only knew because Laura told me. Later, I learned what happened from the case records. Tyler walked in confident. Marcos had him repeat his original story about the kitchen conversation, the banking questions, and the timeline. Tyler told the same story, then Marcos opened my file. He showed the internet protocol logs, device records, intermediary accounts, and the 9 transactions that happened while I was in another state. Tyler's attorney, which meant he wasn't as confident as he acted, asked for a break. 20 minutes later, they returned, and his attorney said Tyler would answer no more questions. By Wednesday, the prosecutor officially opened an investigation into Tyler for theft and filing a false police report. The case against me was closed. When Laura called with the news, I sat alone in my office feeling nothing but empty relief. I called my mom that evening. She already knew. Tyler had called her first. "Nolan," she said, her voice shaking, "Tyler says there's been a misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding, Mum. He says the account was joint. He used that account to pay his own bills for 3 years, $47,000. She went silent. "That can't be right. I've seen every record, every transaction, every dollar. He stole from your retirement account, and when Dad noticed, he blamed me." She started crying. Quiet, broken crying. "Why didn't you tell us?" she whispered. "Because you wouldn't have believed me. You told me not to ruin the family over one mistake." She had no answer. I heard my dad asking what was wrong in the background. "Mom, I have to go. I'm sorry this happened." And I meant it. Over the next few weeks, everything fell apart. Tyler hired a defense attorney. Rachel learned the truth once the legal bill started. According to my dad, there were a lot of slammed doors. My parents met with the bank's fraud department and went through every unauthorized withdrawal. Mum cried the whole time. Dad barely spoke. 3 weeks later, Tyler called me. "You couldn't just let it go?" he asked. "You filed a police report saying I stole from our parents. I was going to pay it back. $47,000. I had a plan. Your plan was me." He didn't answer. After a long silence, he hung up. Over the following months, the legal case ran its course. Tyler was charged with theft and filing a false police report. Because he was a joint account holder, the theft charge became complicated. But lying to the police wasn't. He eventually accepted a plea deal. Probation, restitution, community service, and a conviction. Laura called it a fair outcome. I told her I only cared that the record had been corrected. My relationship with my parents still exists, but it's different now. Smaller, more honest. Mum calls every week. She rarely mentions Tila, and neither do I. She's in therapy. So is my dad. A few months later, Dad called me. "Hey, bud." "Hey, Dad. I owe you a real apology." He paused. "I should have asked more questions. I should have trusted you. When you said you didn't do it, I should have stood beside you. I failed you, and I'm sorry." Standing in my kitchen, I felt a weight I'd carried for months finally begin to lift. "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot." You want to come over this weekend? Just us. Meatloaf. Yeah, I'd like that. Tyler and Rachel separated. Maybe they'll work things out. Maybe they won't. That's their story now. He's paying restitution every month. My parents will never get all of their savings back, but they won't lose everything. As for me, I'm doing well. I go to work, come home, take care of my yard, and recently started seeing someone. Nothing serious yet, but she makes me laugh. Melissa says I seem lighter. I think she's right. I didn't destroy my family. My brother did. I just followed the money. That's what I do.